Good morning, Richard Calhoun, real estate broker with Creekside Realty. We're here to talk about Silicon Valley real estate market graphically and geographically. Week number 14. We'll come back to this page in a few minutes. Here is the first data slide. It's a heat map. It shows days unsold inventory. This is how quickly the market is turning over. It's the supply-demand ratio. But we sell out all these different micro market areas in the time frame list 2 to 3 weeks for a lot of the areas. If the current rate of sales continued with no new listings coming on the market, it tells you how quickly the market's turning over. This is the same information over time. You can see how in the beginning part of the year, we were much paler. We were into a lot more blue on the graph. You can see as we got into the first of the year fairly quickly, DUI improved, it became a red hot seller's marketplace, and it's basically the hottest it's been this year, this past week. This is an easier to understand number. It's the 75th percentile of how long the sellers are taking to sell their property. So 3/4 of the sellers are selling their properties in less than the time listed for each one of the geographical areas. And if you look at that, it's basically just shy of 2 weeks. That means 3/4 of all sellers in those geographical areas are selling their homes in less than 2 weeks. That is a pretty fast marketplace, which is why everything is red. This is the average asking price reduction. You basically can't get above 100% because sellers don't typically raise their asking price, especially in a hot marketplace, because the offers come right in. And at that point, they accept bids that may be over their asking price, but they typically don't raise their asking price. This is the average. You can see there are some areas where they're getting less and some areas where they're getting close to only 90% of what they were asking. And that's their own ask price reduction. So it's the original list price compared to the list price at the time the offer comes in. This is the magnitude of overbidding. This now brings in the buyer into the equation and also requires the escrow to close to find out what the sale price is. This is how much buyers are overbidding the seller's asking price to get a property. And you can see a lot of them are right around 100%. You got East San Jose at 104%. You got Oakland at 109 and Berkeley at 116. But for the most part, right around 100%. There are a couple areas in San Mateo area, 2 areas in San Mateo County that are below 100%. That means that on average, sellers are getting less than their asking price in those 2 communities. The other 15 micro market areas, the sellers are getting more than their asking price on average. This is the frequency of overbidding. How common is overbidding? And you can see the least common area is the San Mateo County coast, where only 1 in 4 sellers get more than their asking price. Even in the slowest area, 25% of the sellers, 1/4 of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. You come down here to Berkeley and Alameda, the city of, and it's 84%. So almost 9 out of 10 sellers in that area are getting more than their asking price. In Santa Clara County, there's some areas around 3/4. Sunnyvale, Cupertino at 76%, North San Mateo County at 2/3. So you can see it's still a pretty robust marketplace with a significant number of the sellers getting more than their asking price. This is the appreciation. I use a 9-month base in 2015, basically April 1st of 2015 through December 31st of 2015. That was selected because it was, a long time ago, which is a good time to take your base. It was also a time frame when the market was fairly stable, so prices had a time to equalize and get a good solid base. And this is the percent appreciation since then. The blue areas have had the least amount of appreciation, and the red areas have had the most amount of appreciation. And in general, rule of thumb is whatever area is appreciating currently the most tends to win this favor because of compounding. What I think you're seeing here is basically with COVID, being close to the job centers was not as important, and buyers weren't willing to pay as much for a premium. And so San Mateo County has seen the least amount of appreciation, where the more affordable, more outlying areas have seen the most appreciation. And that's because they're seeing the most since 2020. This is the sold price. There's 3 sold prices over here. You have the 10 percentile, which is basically the lowest price you can reasonably expect to purchase a single family home for in that given micro market area. The middle number is the median price, the typical, and the right-hand number is the top 90 percentile, the most you'd expect to pay in that area. The color is set based on the median price in the area, and you can see the blue areas are sort of to the east and to the south, the more affordable areas. The west, right along the San Mateo County, Santa Clara County border is the most expensive areas. And then from there, it propagates out and goes down in value, both going north and going south. Here's a recap of the geographical maps we just went over. You can pick your geographical area. You can see what the days on sold inventory is, days on market, price reductions, overbid, frequency of overbidding, the appreciation, the median sold price. And the color coordinating is to the right of the actual numbers. This is a new graph, very similar to the overbid number, but this is the ask price reduction. My thought process on this is it allows you to see what the market's doing without needing to wait till the time for escrow to close, because you're looking at simply the original ask price compared to the ask price at the time the offer was coming in and looking at that ratio. So as soon as the offer is accepted, you now know what that ratio is, and you're looking at each week. So each line is 1 week. We're going to start off a year ago, 12 months ago. We're going to jump forward a month at a time until we get to 13 weeks. We jump to week and go week at a time. The dotted line up here is where we were a year ago, and that's the best line on here. The best ever line is this red line along the top, this dashed red line, where basically everybody was getting 100% of their asking price. You can't do better than that, and that was basically February 14th of 2022. So just a little over a year ago, basically Valentine's Day of last year, we were having our best year, and you can't get any better than everybody getting their asking price. And of course, it's not everybody, but this cuts off at 2.5%. And it's not that they're getting their asking price, it's did they have to reduce their asking price before the offer came in. The worst week we had was also very recent, December 27th of 2022. So that was just 4 months ago. But I do want to put a caveat. This line out here is actually a line from basically January of 2028, which is the worst that I've been able to locate so far. New data, I'm not all the way finished my analysis. Even though this is the worst in recent time, in the last 20 years, we had a year that was worse, January of 2008, and it was way down here. So you can see a fairly significant drawback, because basically you come diagonally down at an angle like this. Now you're up here, the dotted line, the thicker line is going to be the current week, and that was 12 weeks ago, so April 12th, 2022. There you can see you came down with the blue arrow, down again, down, down. Now we're going to go up a bit, plateau, plateau, down, plateau. Now we're turning around and coming back up. Now we're going to sort of hit a little bit of a plateau here. Jumped up with another little plateau, and another jump up. That's actually a jump up, sorry about that. And so you can see that what's happening with the marketplace, and right now we're having the best week we've had in a year. That's encouraging news. And again, the advantage of this is allowing you to see a change in the marketplace without having that lag time of waiting for escrow to close. This is what I've been reporting in the past, which is the sold price, slightly different measure, equally valid, but because you need the sale price to get to the ratio, to get the distribution, you have to wait the length of escrow, which is about 5-6 weeks. Here you can see we came down, down. Now you're going to start going back up again. This is what I call week +1, and that's the current week data through Friday of last night at midnight. And the reason I call it +1 week is it's not a full week. I'm not comparing apples with apples. I normally compare everything based on March 1st, looking back 35 days, and then March 8th, March 15th, March 22nd. So every 7 days going forward. When I get around to February 21st, instead of jumping 7 days to the February 28th, I jump to March 1st, whether that be 8 days on a regular year or 9 days on a leap year. That way, all all my discontinuity is in one time frame. I'm comparing the same time of the year. I always have 5 days of every day of the week. It's trying to get rid of the cyclic nature of the real estate the best we can. Here's the URLs. The green is what I call my root URL. That gets you to the archives of these on YouTube. You add in 2023 Saturday morning at 9 o'clock and you get to this live presentation. You add in the letter H for handout, 2023-04-08 for the year, month, date code, and you get a handout, 53 pages. It's basically these PowerPoints, but when I do the movie, I only show you the first slide of the movies. And I also have a new expanded look. I'm giving you the compressed look on the graphs that are coming. So it's 53 pages. It's the PowerPoint presentation. And if you want a specific episode, you put in the year, month, date code. I'm open for any questions, and going forward, you can answer questions at any time. Not seeing anyone unmuting their mics, I will proceed. Here we're looking at the Silicon Valley. So Silicon Valley consists of Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, and Alameda County. We're looking at the blue line, which is the most inventory you'd ever expect to have, and that's based on the past 10 years. And with a lot of inventory, it's a slow marketplace, which is why the ice blue color. The typical is the median over the past 10 years. The red is the fewest, because when you have limited inventory, you typically have a hot marketplace. This is all 10 years, and what I'm going to be doing now is flipping here where I'm only looking at the past 5 years. And the reason I like this is you can see what's happening a little bit more this year. 4 years back is about all we as humans can remember, and the blue line, the gray line, and the red line give you an idea of the seasonal pattern based on the 10 years. So I think it's more important to look at just the recent time frame. You have the second quarter vertical line, so that's basically April 1st. Now you have the data out here to April the 8th, which was last night. We are going back 35 days. Well, today's April the 8th. So this data is actually through April the 7th last night, acquired on April the 8th. But because I'm doing it on April the 8th and not on the 12th, which is my normal comparison, I'm calling it plus 1 week. And anytime you see an April 12th date or April 19th date that's in the future, that's basically coming back to today, Saturday, with data through midnight on Friday. What you can see right now is the purple line is the current inventory, and it's actually below the red line. So we have a very short, limited supply of inventory. Now, part of what's happening this particular week, and you can see it's come down, is we have Easter, a holiday. Holidays negatively impact the real estate marketplace. Specifically, sellers don't like to put their house on the market the week going into a holiday, because the holiday weekend, they assume buyers are going to be busy and not looking at real estate. Doesn't surprise me, and Easter is a holiday that moves quite a bit, probably 5 weeks, washed out. The fact that we're below where the reddest hot marketplace we really have, I think that's more a holiday impact. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see this number come up next week and we're sort of more where we were the last couple weeks, which is just above the red line, but above the red line. So still a very limited inventory, but not the lowest inventory we've had. Here again is the offers accepted. I'm going to move on and talk about it here. This is the number of offers accepted. And again, basically the same concept, but now a lot of offers is a red hot seller's marketplace, the typical median, and the blue is an ice cold, very few offers. And you can see the purple, the current data, the purple is basically right at the lowest that we've had. So we're having very few offers, but we have very limited inventory. And now we're going to do is look at the days of unsold inventory, and again, expanding it out. And I would appreciate some feedback on whether you, the viewer audience, would prefer to see simply the 10-year, simply the 5-year, or if I need to do this hybrid where I flash the 10-year on the screen and then discuss the 5-year. I like the 5-year, as I said, because you can see more what's happening. People have a hard time remembering what happened in 2019. What happened in 2021 and 2022 is more fresh in their memory. This is days of unsold inventory. How rapidly is the market going? And you can see it's right on top of the median. So we're having a very typical year as far as the speed of the year. And that's because the very limited inventory is balanced by the very limited number number of offers, which gives you a balanced marketplace on supply-demand ratio, which is really the key in a free economy. Now we're looking at the 75th percentile of sellers. How long is it taking the sort of the long typical seller to sell their property? And you can see it's right at the top of the marketplace. So the 75th percentile seller, the seller that's taking the long side of typical, is actually having a slower marketplace. That's really giving you an indication that there's two marketplaces out there. There's the marketplace that's coming on the marketplace and selling really quickly to get DUI down around 2 weeks. But now the 75th percentile seller is taking a little over 3 weeks, maybe 24 days to sell their property, and one of the slowest. So you can see the split is bigger than it typically is, because if we had the same homogeneity that we've had over the last 10 years with typical days of unsold inventory, you'd expect days on marketplace to be typical, which would be down here somewhere around 18 days. You're taking almost a whole week longer than normal, so there's more sellers that for whatever reason are taking longer. The dichotomy that we have seen of a fast-paced marketplace with a few outliers is more exaggerated this year than it has been over the last 10 years. Here's the largest 10% price reduction, and you can see that sellers are taking a bigger price reduction than they've had over the last 10 years. The typical is way up here, somewhere around 94%, so only taking a 6% reduction. Right now we're down here at, it looks like about 88%. The lowest you would expect is up here around 89.5%, so a little bit lower than the worst you'd expect, and you can see it's been down there, and you can see the dip down was pretty significant this year. This is the average asking price reduction. This is on average. You put every seller in a blender, and you can see that in the peak of the marketplace there was enough sellers raising their asking price that we actually went above 100%, which is pretty rare. You can see you hit 100%, but here you're clearly above it in 2022. Now we're down around 99 and at 99.1, and again it's a little bit lower than the worst you'd expect the market to be. This is what percentage of the sellers are doing price reductions. We're having one of the worst years, but we're having less than 10% of the sellers. It's about 13% of the sellers are reducing their asking price. So that means 87% of your sellers aren't reducing their asking price at all by the time they get their offer accepted. Now, they may accept a lower offer, but this is just what they did with their own asking price. And you can see in the hot year, you'd expect about 5% of the sellers to reduce their asking price, and in a typical year, about 7.5%. And again, we're up here probably around 13% of the sellers this year. So about double the number of sellers you'd expect, or a little less than double. This is overbid. This is the median. So this is the midpoint. Half the buyers are overbidding more than this, half are overbidding less than this, and a 99%, a 1% reduction would be included in this. This is not just looking at overbids, but it's looking at the sale price to list price ratio of every transaction. You'd expect it maybe to be at 100%, but with more sellers getting over their asking price, the median is at 102%. The typical median is at 104%, and in a hot median, it was about 111%. You can see that buyers, when the market is absolutely on fire, are willing to overbid a seller's asking price fairly significantly. You can also see how rapidly the market changed this year. Then it stayed at 100% for a while, which is why I typically don't look at the median. And here probably comes the average overbid, 10 years. We'll have to discuss the average overbidding on the 10-year slide, because I apparently don't have the 5-year slide. So you can see we came down here and we had the lowest number of the last 10 years, with the sellers actually getting less than 100% for the first time in any time in the past 10 years, which is just hard for me and a lot of people to gather that typically in Silicon Valley, the 3 counties, Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, and Alameda County, sellers on average get more than their asking price on something as expensive and something that in most areas of the country you negotiate downwards, not upwards. But again, you can see sort of the theme coming through here. Silicon Valley is sort of right on top of a cool marketplace. So we're sort of having the most conservative overbidding we've had in the last 10 years, and right where the least you'd expect it to be. Now we're looking at the frequency of overbidding. How common is overbidding? And you can see right now that only 60% of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. And when you think about that, that's more than half the sellers are getting more than their asking price. And that's the worst we expect in Silicon Valley. The typical, what you're expecting is up here around 73%. The best year we ever had was up here around 85%. Now, I think at Santa Clara County got all the way up to 90%, but we're looking at Silicon Valley, we're looking at the three counties combined. Here is Silicon Valley's median sold price on log scale. And the thing that's nice about this is the straight line, which is just an approximation that was free-handed in there. I need to come back and calculate it, what the best line is. But you can see that in 2022, we were way above, and in 2023, we were way below, and we're catching back up to where you'd expect it to be, which is sort of right along the blue line. We have a little bit ways more to go, but you can see there was basically a huge overrun. This is where, when you're above the straight sloped line, you sort of have overpricing. Your pricing is above where you'd expect it to be based on long-term trends. When it's below, you're under. But keep in mind that every year, basically, you can see there's a dip down for the end of the year holidays. So this is a dip down in the end of the year holidays delayed by the length of escrow. So we're coming right back up. But this dip down has been more significant than any other period of time. And the dip down from here to here is more significant than we've had before. This is active listings in the three counties. So we're changing gears a little bit now, and we're looking at the three counties that make up Silicon Valley individually. If you look back here, gray, Alameda County normally has more inventory than Santa Clara. Now they're essentially identical, but the real takeaway in this graph is look at where inventory normally is. Maybe up here for Alameda County, up here around 1,700, maybe, hit several years and say 1,600. Santa Clara County picked several years, maybe say 1,300. Now they're both down here below 600, 575 roughly. The inventory is clearly lacking. And even if we come back and compare first quarter, by first quarter, this year we were in 2018, we were pretty aggressive, but we were at 800 for Santa Clara County and you were at 1,000 for Alameda County. And now again, you're below 600, somewhere around 575. So lack of inventory is huge. Right now, for whatever reason, sellers are simply not selling anywhere in the three county area. Offers accepted. Again, notice the downward trend for the last 2 years. We've been selling fewer and fewer homes, but even overall, the trend here has been a slower downward trend. So you'd expect to be selling maybe somewhere up around here. So we're selling way fewer homes than you'd expect. And the same is true in San Mateo County. San Mateo County is a smaller county. So that's why the number of offers accepted is lower. Days of unsold inventory. This is the ratio. You can see that San Mateo County has been basically the best right up until the pandemic was announced. And then San Mateo County was on the top and is still on the top. And that sort of ties in with my thought process earlier in the presentation that consumers are not willing to pay a premium to be as close to work now, or aren't willing to pay as large of a premium. And they're willing to commute a little bit further since some people have the luxury of working remotely now, at least occasionally. Here's 75th percentile days on market on the three counties. And you can see that it basically has a very cyclic seasonal pattern, and the three counties are typically very similar to each other. And we're still going down right now, which would tend to be indicating an improving marketplace, even though by first quarter, a lot of years you're turning around and going up, which would be the slowing marketplace. So right now we're still improving. And while we're on this, the reason I didn't put the 5-year slides on here is I don't have the 10-year median on here, the 10-year best and worst years, and the concept which would be which line would I use, because I'm trying to compare the three lines. And for days on marketplace, one line for all three counties might work. But when you get back up here to offers accepted, San Mateo County is clearly on a different playing field than Alameda County and Santa Clara County. And it's simply to do with their size. Having a combined doesn't work. And therefore, I'm showing you the 10-year pattern. And on the first slides where I have the typical for the 10-year pattern, I don't think it's necessary. Here's the magnitude of list price reductions that the sellers are taking. So you can see that back here in 2009, Santa Clara County got hit pretty hard compared to the other two counties. Right now, Alameda County and Santa Clara County are way up, or maybe the reverse way of saying it is San Mateo County is getting particularly hard hit right now and getting harder hit than it's basically ever had other than in the recent past. This is the average overbid magnitude. So now you're looking at the sale price to list price ratio on average, and you can see that Alameda County is doing the best, where the average seller is getting something like 107% of their asking price. And Santa Clara and San Mateo County were down at about 103%. Still above 100%. You can see we got below 100% just this year. We've gone from basically 98 to 103%. We've improved by about 5 percentage points, which is a pretty significant improvement. This is the frequency of overbidding. Alameda County is the best up here at around 66%, followed by Santa Clara County at somewhere around 57%. And finally, San Mateo County at something like about 49% of the sellers getting more than their asking price. Here is looking at price. This is on log scale. I'm putting the horizontal line so you can come back and find out where price is back to. You have the typical pecking order with San Mateo County being the most expensive, Santa Clara County being the second, and Alameda County being the most affordable. They're all coming back to reasonably 2021 prices. Santa Clara County is probably a little bit above. San Mateo County is a little bit below. Alameda County is a little bit below. There's some variation, but that's a benchmark. With these huge perturbations we went, it's really hard to determine value. Coming back and finding a relatively flat area and then being able to adjust is, in my opinion, a valid way of determining current values. Here is it on regular analog paper for those that prefer. This is the appreciation. You can see that the three counties have done fairly well over the long time. And again, the base year is from April 1st of 2015 through December 31st, 2015. You can see that the prices were fairly flat. And you can see that Santa Clara County has had the highest appreciation, followed by Alameda, and San Mateo County having the least appreciation. But they're all pretty close. They're from 160%, call it, to 175%. So they're within 10% appreciation of each other. This is the actual data for those that prefer it, and the three counties that make up Silicon Valley and Silicon Valley overall. You can see for, on average, globally, the active inventory is down, and that's because of the Easter holiday. I would actually hypothesize that it appears that those areas that are more expensive, the more wealthy residents tend to take holidays more seriously, and they're the ones that had the decrease in new listings coming on the marketplace. And Alameda County actually had a growth of 2%, and they were more affordable. And I think that's what explains the end of the year dip that we see in pricing. There's a move to less expensive areas. I was originally thinking it'd be smaller homes, but that doesn't really pan out in the data. I think it's going from your Palo Altos, your Menlo Parks, to your Pleasanton, Livermore areas, making up a bigger market share of the area. Number of offers accepted, that isn't impacted. That will get impacted this coming week. So next week, I would expect the offers accepted to go down a little bit. And that's because consumers were off doing holiday related issues this weekend. And there was also less sellers coming on the marketplace. So there's less new inventory, which is what has the highest percentage of selling every week. And then by 2 weeks from now, we're sort of past the holiday influence. Your DUI, remember, about a change of about 5 days per week is what I call a shift in the marketplace. So this is an improvement. A negative number is a faster paced marketplace, but that's only about 2.5 days, which really is just your fluctuation. And again, it's probably a lot of it's attributed to just less inventory coming on the market this week, because if there was more inventory coming on the marketplace, DUI would be higher. The decrease that we're experiencing here would have been smaller. And then your closings data, whether it be the days on marketplace marketplace or overbid ratio or appreciation from 2015 or appreciation since 2020. And the 2020 is over the entire calendar year. The 2015 is only over the last 9 months. This is comparing apples and apples. I just left this apples and apples because March 5th was close enough to today, March 8th, that I thought that it was better just to compare. And that's why this is labeled April the 5th. And I didn't bring on the April data yet because there wasn't enough of it to look at. The inventory is basically a little higher than it was last year, but basically lower than any other year that I'm seeing up here. But some of the key takeaways we've been harping on is in sales. We've been having a record low number of sales. Well, now we no longer have a record number of sales because 2020 had a lower number of sales and therefore is the record low, but that was influenced by the pandemic. And just to be clear, this data going back over this 20-year period of time is single family homes, Santa Clara County only. It's not Silicon Valley. And then if you look at the overbid down here, we're a lot lower than we've been in the last several years, but we're sort of in the same order of magnitude that we were in the early 2010 area. And if you come back all the way to 2008 and stuff, then you have numbers that are actually a little bit lower. Not a robust overbidding, but compared to where we've been recently, but still very good overall. And then price at 1.7 million is down 200,000, almost 10% from last year. This is median price, and you got to be real careful because median price is not what's happening to property value in any given area. Typically, the median price is more stable than the actual property values. Here is actually the record low, so you can see that this year is the 24th out of the last 25 years, and you can see that 2020 was the record low. We're at 12% above where we were with COVID. On a 10-year basis, we're the 9th worst year. The worst year was 1531, which again was 2020, and we're 1% above that. So we're only 1% above where we were with COVID. I think what we're going to see happen is this number will get to be bigger. 2020 will be the record by a larger and larger percentage until we get to, hard to guess exactly when, about May the 1st potentially. And then I think what we'll do is see a reversal and 2020 start doing better. And I would expect, there's no way to know if things stay the way they are now. I'd expect the after COVID surge when we could start showing properties again to overcome the record low that we're having once again in 2023. Here is looking at sort of a recap. So this is the inventory compared to the percentage. So your inventory right now compared to where you'd expect it to be over 10 years, we're only at like 64% of the inventory you'd expect. Offers are a little bit lower at maybe like 63%. That gives you the DUI of exactly where you'd expect it to be. The marketplace we're having right now is typical of the marketplace as far as the speed, but the real takeaways are we have very limited inventory and very limited number of offers. And you can see that we haven't had this combination before at this magnitude. The gray line was down here, but that's your days unsold inventory because your offers were way high. So you've had way high offers with way low inventory. Now what we're having is way low inventory and way low offers, and we've never had that combination before. This is a summary again of all the different micro market areas. We've already gone over this once. This is the recap. We've gone over this once. Now we're going on to the Greater Bay Area data. So the Greater Bay Area data is done by 5 regions. We're talking about Silicon Valley. We're talking about the cities, which are San Francisco and Marin. Hard to call Marin a city, but then you have the North Bay, Sonoma, Napa, Solano, Contra Costa. You have the Central Valley of San Joaquin and Sacramento, and you have the Central Coast of Santa Cruz and Monterey. The slide numbers are going to be incorrect because I added in a bunch of slides. Now we're doing the reverse order, so we're going to start off with the raw data. You can pick whatever data you want. You can see San Francisco looks like it's losing the appreciation battle of only 34% appreciation, maybe followed by Marin at 45%. Everybody else is above that by quite a bit. The lowest I'm seeing other than that is like Napa at 47% appreciation. It all depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for speed of the marketplace, Silicon Valley is typically the fastest. To me, these are the benchmarks that are important. You can determine what you're trying to follow, what's important for you. But if you look at all of them, then you have a pretty good understanding of what what's going on in that given marketplace. Here's your inventory of the 5 regions. And here we can see pretty clearly what I was talking about earlier, this downtrend. You're talking about North Bay and Central Valley, 2 large geographical regions. And, they had between 4,000 and 5,000 listings basically at all times. And then in 2017, it came down a little bit. And, 2019 really didn't change. But starting in 2020, come way down, and now it's way down here. I mean, they're only having 1,500 homes. They're having like 1/3 the inventory that they typically were having. If you look at Silicon Valley, it might have been between 2,000 and 3,500 in a given year with, hard to tell, but if you pick the middle, clearly getting up around 3,000. Now you're down here at 1,500 for Silicon Valley for all 3 counties combined. And if you come back to first quarter, that's where we were last year. But first quarter in 19, we were up here at about 2,800. First quarter in 18, we were 2,000. First quarter in 17, we were about 2,400. First quarter in 16, we were just shy of 3,000. First quarter in 15, we were about 2,400. And first quarter of 14, we were about 2,300. And to be down here at 1,500, there's just a lack of inventory. And you can even see that same trend in the smaller areas, being the Central Coast, San Francisco, the cities. So they've gone from 1,000 down to 500. And, Central Coast actually doesn't have much of a seasonal cycle compared to the other regions. And you can see it's right typically at around 1,000 homes. And it's, probably a little bit below 500, probably closer to 400. There's been a huge reduction in active inventory that's available. Now we're looking at the number of offers accepted. And again, the trend downward is not as severe, but we're clearly below the level that you'd expect the offers to be. You got 3 regions fairly close together, those being Silicon Valley, the North Bay, and the Central Valley. And then you have the Central Coast and San Francisco and Marin being much smaller areas down under 500. Days on sold inventory, this is the speed. If all 5 regions were having the same speed, they'd all be together. But we sort of have the same type of thing where the 3 regions are fairly quick, and then your 2 slower regions are San Francisco and Marin and Central Coast. So the San Mateo, San Francisco and Marin and Central Coast are hanging out together in a lot of the data. And I would suspect that San Francisco Marin would be normally nowadays on market, the 75th percentile. To me, this is a real good benchmark. This is the long typical seller. San Francisco and Marin, they're moving quickly, even though they have one of the slower DUI, which is almost something that doesn't compute, but it says that maybe their market isn't as segregated up there with the 2 different marketplaces. Silicon Valley clearly has 2 different marketplaces where sellers come on the marketplace, sell right away. Other sellers come on the marketplace and don't sell. So the days on marketplace, the quickest area is Silicon Valley, followed by the cities, followed by North Bay, followed by Central Coast, and the slowest is the Central Valley. But, still, you're looking at a number somewhere around 2 months. And for 75% of the sellers to sell their property within 2 months of going on the marketplace, I don't think is unreasonably slow. 2 months isn't a huge time to get an offer. What's the bigger story, in my opinion, is the fact that down here in Silicon Valley, in 3 weeks, 75% of the sellers are getting their house sold. This is the median for the people that prefer that same metric, basically. This is the largest reduction in asking price. So the 10% of sellers that are taking the biggest price reduction, you're looking at the asking price at the time the offer is accepted compared to the original asking price. And everybody's pretty close together, somewhere right around 87%. You can see there isn't much fluctuation in here. It's really a testament to, sellers, for the most part, pricing their home correctly and not needing to do a price reduction, because this is where the normal 10% extreme is typically way out and bouncing enough that you really don't make any sense out of it, especially on something as ununiform as real estate. And here, when you're looking at the extreme, you're still fairly consistent. Here's the average price. So now you put everybody in a blender, blend it up, and typically we're getting from about 98.5% to about 99.25%. So we call it basically all five regions are getting about 99%. That means sellers on average are taking a 1% price reduction. Again, a strong indication that they're coming on the market close to where the value of the property is. Overbidding. Sellers reduce their price 1%, but buyers come in, and I don't know what the average of these five would be, but maybe 2% above. So buyers are willing to pay more than the sellers are willing to reduce. And you can see that the two regions got up above 118%, and they're still doing fairly strong now at somewhere around 104.5 and 106% above their asking price. So nowhere close to the 118% at the peak of the marketplace, and probably a little bit lower than the typical, but still pretty respectable when the sellers are getting more than their asking price. And then the other three regions are pretty close to right at 100%. This is the median, so this is the typical. Three regions right at 100%, and the typical overbidding versus the average is only 102%. That means half the overbidding that's happening is above 102%, half is below, and the part that's below could be below 100%. It's not eliminating underbids. This is the smallest overbid, which is in fact an underbid. So now you're looking at the 10 percentile the other direction, and you're down here around, pretty clustered around 95%. The outlier is Santa Cruz, the Central Coast, down here at 92% and at 92.5%. Largest overbids, this is the buyers, that are overbidding the most. You're getting both extremes. In San Francisco and Marin, they're up there around 122%. In Silicon Valley, they're around 117%. And the other three regions are around 105, 107%. Frequency of overbidding. How common is overbidding? 60% for the cities in Silicon Valley. The other three regions are basically down around 45% on average. Two of them are down around 35%. And the gray is the North Bay. It's up around 45%. This is the appreciation overall. You can see that the San Francisco Marin has really pulled away. And again, the pull away happened back here with the pandemic. That's a strong indication of what I was saying earlier, that, within Silicon Valley, we saw it where San Mateo County was doing the worst out of the three counties. Here, the San Francisco Marin region is doing the worst out of the five regions. The other four regions are pretty close together, but even when you look at those, Santa Cruz, Monterey is doing one of the best, followed by Central Valley. Those are longer commutes. The ones that are going over 17 into Silicon Valley isn't the best drive. Yes, there are some people that are employed over in Santa Cruz County, but the local job center is clearly somewhere in Silicon Valley. And when you start seeing it repetitively, where the areas that were close to the job centers have had the least appreciation, and the areas furthest from the job centers have had the most appreciation, clearly there's a shift in place. And with that, I'm done. Again, we've been talking about Silicon Valley real estate market week 14. The green is what I call my root URL. You add 2023, you get to the Saturday morning 9 a.m. presentations. You add in the letter H, 2023 0408, and you get the handout, 53-page PDF of the PowerPoint slides, any particular episode. I don't think anyone's got any questions, but let me check real quick. Nobody's got a question, so I will call it a week. And thanks for coming in. Talk to you next week. Bye now.